Hello and welcome to another edition of Santos on Sports. My name is Paul Santos. Welcome in. Chris is unavailable tonight, and it's unusual to go solo, but we hadn't done a show in so long, and there's so much to talk about that I figured, you know what, I'll just go on and do a short version of the show. And if you want to call in and give your opinions, we definitely encourage you to do that. You can call right here at the number at the bottom of the screen at 774-218-3393. That's 774-218-3393. We'd like to thank our sponsors. They are Scotty's Pub, 202 Pleasant Street in Fall River. Citywide Glass with 3 locations to serve you, one in Dartmouth, another in Fall River, and another in Taunton. Lakeville Athletic Club, located at 325 Bedford Street, in the town of Lakeville, Massachusetts, where you can play tennis and pickleball. And Attorney John Seed, 156 8th Street, New Bedford, and you can get in touch with him at johnseedlaw.com. Okay, we're going to start with the Bruins. The question that we asked tonight was, can the Bruins ride Swayman all the way to the Stanley Cup? Well, the answer to that is yes, except there's one problem. They should play him. They should ride him. He's definitely the player that comes through in the clutch. He's shown that throughout the game so far. The problem is that defense that the Bruins have is horrendous, starting with Charlie McAvoy and the rest of the cast. Turning the puck over, they are a turnover machine. Every time Florida puts the puck into their offensive end, the Bruins can't get the puck out of their own end. Now, I don't care what kind of goalie you have there. Swayman can stand on his head sideways. He's not going to stop some of the shots that the Bruins had last night. And the thing is, right, if you keep turning the puck over, I mean, there's a professional hockey players. Their skill level is through the ceiling. I think one of the goals happened to the Bruins coughed up the puck behind their own net. Next thing you know, there were 2 players right in front of the net. One passed to the other, and the other player had an open net. Even Swayman sliding over there couldn't make that stop. So unless the Bruins get a better defense, the only cup they're going to have is the one between their legs. They're not going to have any cup. So I think they need to do something about the defense. I don't know what. I think Montgomery has done everything he can. He's brought people up from the minor leagues. He's shuffled a lineup around. He's brought people up from Providence and everything else. I don't know what else you can do, but they better do something. But they look at that tape and figure out what's wrong, because as long as they're coughing up the puck in their own end, I don't care what goalie is in that. You can have a combination of Ken Dryden, Jacques Plante, and some of the greatest goalies of all time in there, all rolled into one, and they're not going to stop the turnovers in their own end. So that's the situation with the Bruins. I was very fortunate to be at Game 7 the other night when Pasternak scored that goal. In fact, I couldn't help myself. I had a little earpiece on me, and I called it. I called it as if I was doing the play-by-play. I always enjoyed doing play-by-play, so it was a lot of fun. If you go over to YouTube and you type that in, you'll be able to find it under my name. I just kind of called the last goal. It was a lot of fun, and it was a great moment. But the Bruins have to go on and win the Stanley Cup. If they don't go on and win the Stanley Cup, it's really not going to matter, that goal. It'll just be like a memorable goal. But if they go on to win the Stanley Cup, now it's going to be like Dave Roberts stealing that base, or Big Papi hitting that big home run against Detroit, that grand slam, something like that. But the Bruins have to go on to win the Cup. Otherwise, it doesn't matter. I just don't see it with that defense. They've got to do something. For you to be in your own zone for like a minute straight, not on the power play, not on the penalty kill, I mean, and you can't get the puck out of your own end, and you go entire periods without getting a shot on net, I mean, how are you going to win the Cup? How are you going to get past the next round? How are you going to get past this round? But then the next round and the round after that, forget it. You're not going to be able to do it, even with Swayman. But as far as Swayman, there's no question he's the money guy. It's certainly not Olmark. The only way I would take Swayman out is if he had 2 real duds in a row, or he got hurt, or he got terribly tired. Then I might consider taking him out. Other than that, you ride him all the way as long as you can. As for the Celtics, have you ever seen a red carpet all the way to the finals like this? I mean, look, I'm rooting for the Celtics. I hope they win. But their path all the way to the championship is a joke. I mean, think about Jason Tatum, right? I'm always criticizing Jason Tatum. I mean, I like the player. I think he's a good player and all that. But really, you know, he likes to think of himself as a top 5 player in the league. He likes to think of himself as the best player in the league. Well, you can forget that. He's not the best player in the league. The reason why the Celtics are winning is, yes, because of him, but mostly because of the supporting cast, like DW, who's gone crazy shooting all those shots from three-point land. How about Jaylen Brown, who basically put the team on his back the other night? How about Pritchard off the bench? Pritchard came off the bench and got almost as many points as Tatum did. Pritchard had 18 points, and Tatum had 18 points and Pritchard had 16 points. And he got those 16 points off the bench. So explain that to me. How can this guy be the best player in the league, yet the supporting cast are basically performing better than him? Just on the Celtics, not even counting the rest of the league. If the Celtics go and win the championship, right, and I hope they do, and if they beat whoever's on their path, they beat whoever's on their path. But think about this. Tatum didn't have to play against Embiid. They didn't have to play against Jimmy Butler. They didn't have to play against, possibly the Joker. Things are really falling into place for them. And if they go on to win, good for them. But, there really is a lot of players that the Celtics have not had to play as we proceed along through the playoffs. All right, let's start off here with Butch from Acushnet. Good evening, Butch.
Hey, what's going on, fellas?
What's going on? How are you?
Pretty good. How you making out?
I'm good. I'm doing the show solo. I think Chris got tied up, so I figured we hadn't been on in a while, so I figured I would just go for it solo.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Well, as long as I got knowledgeable sports fans like you calling in, I'm all set.
Let's talk about the Bruins.
Sure, go ahead.
So they better figure out something on how to get the puck out of their zone.
100%.
That first pass to the outlet man, and it's just not happening. They've got to figure out. You would think with the Panthers pinching down and playing such tough forecheck that there would be opportunities for breakaways, long passes, people open. But let me tell you something. That first pass, there's a lot of Bruins, and everyone's guilty of it, including the captain Marchand that played one off the glass last night at the end of the second period and couldn't get the puck out of the zone. Never mind get the puck out of the zone, but simply get the puck out of the zone, not, a pass that creates a rush on our own. But, man, I'll tell you, the forechecking for the Panthers just destroyed the Bruins. I think they saw something on film or they figured out that our defensemen are weak and can't get, that first pass. But the forechecking was just unbelievable. The whole game was in the Bruins' end, other than the first period. It's one thing, you can say the Bruins went to Florida, they won, they took one, and that is true. The goal was probably to go there, take one game, and then come back to Boston and go to work. But I'll tell you that loss last night was, it's kind of demoralizing, and I'm not sure if they can recover from it.
Right. It's only one game, so, you have a bad game, you chalk it up to a bad game, and you try to regroup. But as I said in my opening remarks, and I agree with you 100%, they've got to come up with a way to get the puck out of their own end. I mean, Swayman, he's made like some unbelievable saves in the first 4 or 5 minutes of both games. Yeah. And he really has saved them because, Florida could be on the board in the first 30 seconds. I mean, the puck is in the Bruins' end minute after minute. I mean, this is the National Hockey League. For the puck to be in your zone for a minute or a minute 10 seconds, and you're in the.
I always hope they would ice the puck on occasion. Just ice it, get it out of there, relieve some of the pressure. Right. It was like the Panthers were on a power play the entire second and third period.
Well, it's interesting because the Panthers are known for their forecheck. So when the Bruins were playing against Toronto and they finally got by Toronto just barely, now they're playing against Florida. It's like, hey, the Bruins got by Toronto. That's all well and good, but be ready for a relentless forecheck. And I don't know, they had the forecheck a little bit in game one, even though the Bruins won game one. But now in game two, now that they've had a chance to kind of dust the rust off, that forecheck is relentless. And they've tried different defensemen. They brought a guy up from Providence that was like 30 years old. They're trying all kinds of stuff, and they just can't get the puck out of there. And I don't care how great Swayman plays. You can't have the puck in your own end all that time like that.
Yeah, they took some bad penalties, and even, I thought the Brusques penalty was just horrible. That tripping, it was just, why do you do that? But that first pass when the puck is dumped in, and the Bruins, the defenseman gets back there, gets the puck and turns around, and there's a Panther in his face. It's almost like it's a hot potato, you know?
Yeah.
It's not a strategic pass; it's a blind pass, and most of the time, it's not even. It's right to a Panther.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's not like tipped off the Bruins stick or they checked someone. The target of the pass is checked off the puck. No, it's just a hot potato, and it's almost like I remember like being a young hockey player, like a little kid, and it just blind pass because you're afraid, to hold on to the puck or what's going to happen if this guy gets here. But I don't know what they got to do. I'm not an NHL coach, but they got to figure out something. And you would think, like I said, that there would be openings somewhere else. If the Bruins have to move out of the zone, I don't know. I don't know what to do, but they better figure it out because that was one way game. That was all Panthers.
And how about when the Bruins go like almost the whole period? We're just like one shot on net. I mean, that's what happens when the puck's in your own end, I guess, the whole time. But I mean, you got to get more shots on net than that. That's pathetic.
They did the same thing in Toronto. They had a period with one shot. But I agree with you. Maybe they went back and looked at the Toronto series. I'm not sure, but it's men against boys. I mean, they won't win another game unless they fix that. If the Panthers figure that out and do the same thing, and the Bruins don't make any adjustments, it's over. I mean, that's like I said. They went to Florida, won one game, and everybody says, "Well, that was the mission," but man, that was a demoralizing loss. I don't know.
Well, I got a comment here from Louis Cavallo. He says that we have a new Stephen A. Smith because I was going on a rant when I first came on. And then I got a comment from Anne-Marie Baptista. Thank you for commenting. She says they need to keep Swayman in goal throughout the entire playoffs. Don't even think about Ullmark. What do you think about that?
Nah, I like. In fact, I was watching the game via phone. I was watching it at my house with Chris, and Chris was texting me, and he said, "I'd pull Swayman right now," and then they did. It was called by Chris, and I thought that was a good.
I did too. In that situation, yes, but as far as they got to go back to Swayman in the next game.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand why they wouldn't. None of it was Swayman's fault. They would have been 15-1 if it wasn't for Swayman. It was just relentless. It was unmatched. Now,
while I got you on the line, right, the Boston Celtics, right, has the path opened up any better? There's a red carpet, right, all the way to the end. They don't have to play anybody, right?
Yeah, well, I'm not I've told you before, Paul, I'm not a big NBA guy, but just by my son and Chris and you and listening. The Celtics have a history of not being able to close out in the last couple of years. So it's never over till it's over.
I thought for sure that if they got to the finals and they played Denver, that Denver would be able to finish them off. But now that Denver is down 0-2 and they seem to be coming unraveled, I don't see Minnesota beating the Celtics in the finals. Do you?
No. But here's the thing. When these teams, these favorites, they lose games at home and they don't put teams away like I know we're talking NBA, but like the Bruins, you got to play 7 games against a team that you should have beat and closed out in 4 or 5.
Yeah, right.
Or even 6 games. And your gas tank, that needle's on empty. I don't know if you can, those are all, and those things expose themselves later on in the next series with fatigue and stuff like that. So, if the Bruins can take care of business, and that's what it's going to come down to. If they can take care of business early and often, they got a strong chance. But if they do the same thing and they take long series with teams they're supposed to be beating, it's going to be competitive all the way around.
I got to tell you, I got an opinion on something, and I know you alluded to it a little bit, and I hear a lot of commentators saying, well, they went down there, they took 1 out of 2, so now you come home with the 1 out of 2. That used to be a big thing, when it was the Boston Garden and Chicago Stadium and Montreal Forum and all that, right? You go down there, you split, you come back, you're at home. But the home ice doesn't seem to mean anything anymore. Everybody plays on the same sheet and the same kind of ice, and the buildings are all the same. And, to me, I think you can take that and throw it out.
There's a little bit of truth to that. I would agree with you that the ice surfaces now are all standardized and cookie cutter type buildings and stuff. I would agree with you to that point. The issue that if the Bruins would have lost 2-1 in overtime in Game 2, I would feel much better coming back with being so competitive for 120 minutes, 2 games. They competed the whole time. I'd feel a whole lot better, even if they came back 1-1 with a loss like that, as opposed to what happened last night.
Hey, what did you think of Pasternak dropping the gloves against Kachuk?
Yeah, I thought that was manly. right? I mean, he didn't have to do that. He doesn't fight. I don't think he did that well in the fight, but there's something to be said to both of them.
I guess.
There's a lot of pushing and shoving and cheap shots, and people will say stuff when the linesmen are there to separate. But the two boys went out there with one thing in mind, and they agreed together that they were going to go out there and, they were kind of sick of each other's stuff. So that might even be the high point of the whole game for the Bruins. And wanted to do something to try to change what was going on. So
yeah,
Kachuk too. I thought he was manly about it.
All right, when men were men. All right, thank you very much for calling. All right, let's see what happened here. Hello? Let's see. I'm going to try to switch to the other caller and see if this works. Let's try this guy. Hello, Ryan?
Hey, how's it going?
Ryan, you're on Santos on Sports. How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I'm doing a solo tonight.
Yeah. I saw that I would have covered tonight if I wasn't at work today.
You snuck over to the phone, did you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I did. I took a little break. Give my guy some love,
All right, that sounds good. So what are we talking about here? Bruins, Celtics, all of the above?
Oh, all of the above, absolutely. Yeah. Let's starting with last night. Like I look at it as kind of like a tale of two periods. I grouped the second and third periods because they pretty much played the same damn way. First period, they come out, they play fast, they play physical, they play with urgency. It seemed like that hit by Marchand kind of set the tone.
Yeah.
And like we were texting each other last night, that forecheck by Charlie Coyle, that was amazing. And, he deserved a goal on that 3-on-1 after the fact.
Mm-hmm.
But then after the fact, they just forgot how to play defense. Charlie McAvoy played as badly as I've ever seen him play.
Yeah.
And, my coworker and I talk about this all the time, was a Bruins fan. Derek Forbort on the ice is absolutely useless on both sides. He just kind of exists. And to answer the question about Swayman, personally, I wouldn't. I think you could ride him to the couple. We actually, could win a damn game in this series. Well, I know he's in one game one, but you know what I'm saying. We could. I would prefer not to, just because of that. That grueling 3-game stretch against Toronto that was completely unnecessary because you blew another 3-1 lead. I kind of want to see the rotation because neither Olmark nor Swayman are necessarily an issue. You could kind of swap the two of them and get the same amount of play. So I kind of like the idea of giving those guys some rest, especially Swayman coming off of that game 7.
All right. So let me ask you this. I think you're in the minority. So now this game tomorrow night at the Garden, right? You would put Olmark in there?
I would. I would give Jeremy Swayman a breather because again, the goaltending, one guy versus another, that's not going to be an issue. And Olmark has played well against Florida in the regular season. And the thing is, you referenced it. The previous caller referenced it. It doesn't really matter who's in net for you. The defense up in front of them has been absolute garbage because again, McAvoy, Forbort, Mason Lowry, in fact, even though they won game 1, the puck handling in our own zone was absolute dog water. We can't clear it to save our lives. So until the back end defense improves, there's not you're not going to have much of a chance no matter who's in net.
What do you think's going on with McAvoy? I mean, here's a guy who they gave a good contract to, was a Norris contender many times, although that's going down the list. He's not as much of a Norris contender as he was even a couple of years ago.
Right.
Just doesn't seem to be the same player. I know he had an injury and so forth, but I don't know. He's struggling out there, and he's supposed to be our best guy.
Yeah, no, I think the contract was $9 million a year. He's playing like he's worth about 9 cents. So, but I mean, and maybe he does have an injury that's lingering a little bit, which I guess I'm not going to use that as an excuse though. You got to at least be able to have your body in there to block some of these shots. And even the previous series, what you're a $9 million a year defenseman going up against I know Austin.
Hi, hang on, please. Oops. All right, I just lost Ryan, but that's okay. Call that number. It might be a good idea not to call until the last person is all done. So that's just the way we have to do it because we only have one line over here. So I was trying to put one caller on hold and continue to talk to Ryan. So let's see if we can get Ryan back there because we didn't want to interrupt Ryan. And if you were the gentleman that just called from the 508 area code, hello, Ryan, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
I must have accidentally hung up on my ear.
Oh,
But,
okay.
but yeah, but I was just kind of finishing the point. Like, a $9 million a year goalie, like you can't be playing this subpar of defense in the playoffs. And again, going back to the Toronto series, that one-on-one against Austin Matthews, I thought that was just kind of a microcosm of it.
Yeah, right. I mean, I don't understand the whole defense too, all the other supporting cast too. For the puck to be in the Bruins zone for that long, I mean, it's like a high school team that's playing a division higher than your team, and you just can't get the puck out of your own end. And I'm thinking to myself, that's what it feels like we're watching here sometimes with the Bruins and the Panthers.
Yeah, and I've talked about it multiple times. Like it feels like we're in our own zone more during a 5-on-5 than we are on an opposing power play, which is absolutely ridiculous. Like I feel like we're more likely to get a shorthanded goal than just like allowing it in our own end, the 5-on-5.
Well, my thought is a little different. I think I would stay with Swayman until he cools off because nothing against Ullmark. I think Ullmark played a very good game in Game 2 against Toronto. It wasn't an issue. In fact, I would give him like a very good. I think he was very good. But the other guy was standing on his head. You know what I mean? So I still think you got to go with the standing on your head guy over the very good guy until something happens to the standing on the head guy. On the other hand, you make a good point. A guy maybe it worked during the regular season and maybe the other guy's fresh and, he had Florida's number all year too, Ullmark did. So there's another argument there. Interesting to see what Montgomery does. I think he's probably going to go back to Swayman because I think he's probably going to be afraid to change at this point. But it'll be interesting to see. And then if Swayman plays tomorrow night and the Bruins get beat again, okay, now that's 2 games in a row that Swayman was in there, so at some point, whether it's tomorrow night or some other night, you may have to give that some good consideration.
Yeah, I mean, and again, like again, I talk about this with my coworker all the time. Like, but for the most part, goalies do play throughout the entire playoffs. So I wouldn't be mad about sticking with Swayman. But I think if you start to see him struggle a little more, that's more of a sign of this fatigue is starting to set in. And you got a guy who just won the Vezina this last year, sitting waiting in the rafters pretty much. So I would want to put him in there just to give Swayman some rest.
Now, what do you think about the Celtics? I mean, you want to talk about the seas parting like this right here. Don't have to play Giannis. Don't have to play Embiid. Probably aren't going to have to play the Joker now. I mean, who's there? Who's like in the way? Edwards? I mean, you know what I mean? It feels like that the red carpet is being rolled out for the Celtics.
I half agree with that. Like the way it went in Game 1 against the Cavs, I feel like, okay, Donovan Mitchell's got to go off for 60 if they're going to win this series. I still see us dropping like a game or two to them because that's just who the Celtics are. They lost Game 2 without Jimmy Butler.
Well, Jimmy Butler, that's another one. You're right.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, and if we're dropping Game 2 in the Garden, no less, to a Heat team that doesn't have Jimmy Butler, then I feel like we're bound to drop one to the Cavs at some point, whether it be tonight or sometime in Cleveland. But if you're asking me, I don't think the Knicks are going to be that easy of a task because they've always played us tough in the regular season. And, even though talent wise they don't really match up with us. Like Jalen Brunson's been going off in the playoffs. Tom Thibodeau always puts a tough team out there, and we've seen the Celtics crumble under tough teams too. And you were talking about Minnesota earlier. I disagree with you when it comes to that because I'm watching them play the Nuggets these past couple of days, and I'm like, okay, am I time traveling back to a point before I was born? Because the kind of defense that they're playing, they're smothering Jokic. That has to be the 2 worst games I've seen Jokic play back to back in maybe ever in the time I've been watching basketball. So I think that would be a horrible matchup for the Celtics if they went up against them in the finals.
Mm-hmm. The thing is, the Celtics are deeper than Denver, aren't they? A little bit. So you can't focus on one guy you focus on Jokic. I mean, they have some supporting cast too. I'm not saying that, but it's not like you can just shut down Tatum and the thing's over. We've seen how, Brown has elevated his game, and DW has played great. Pritchard's come off the bench, and arguably Tatum hasn't even been playing that great. He's done a lot with rebounds and assists and stuff like that. So good for him that he's moving the ball around. That's what you want the leader to do. You don't want the leader to be a ball hog if somebody else is hot. But the Celtics feel like they're deep enough to be able to withstand a defense focusing on a particular player.
Yeah, I can agree with that because Jaylen Brown was kind of like both, like you're saying, Derek White and also Jaylen Brown. They're the ones going off in that game one. And Denver does have a nice supporting cast, like Jamal Murray in the playoffs has been something else. Like it hasn't shown against the Timberwolves at least not yet, but he's something else. But I take most of our cast over like the likes of Kentavious Caldwell Pope and Michael Porter Jr. and guys like that. But if I'm being perfectly honest, like going back to the Timberwolves for a second, I think they're kind of that deep too. Because forget Anthony Edwards, you got Karl Anthony Towns playing the forward. Now you got the defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, playing the 5, and they got a good bench too with guys like Nickeil Alexander-Walker and those guys. So yeah, I just personally don't. And even between them and the Knicks, I just personally don't think it's as much of a red carpet because I've seen these guys crumble before.
Well, it's interesting to see, whether or not it's going to be the Celtics or someone else. I have to say, I'm watching this guy Edwards, and I'm always jabbing with Chris over here about the it factor and all that. Man, I'm watching that Edwards guy, and I know he's a little bit younger than Tatum and all that. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, wow, this guy, there's something about the way he plays, and I haven't watched him long enough, but he has that kind of I don't know what it is, that sort of that swag, that it factor kind of thing. I don't know. I like that player.
Absolutely, yeah, I 100% agree with you, and he definitely has that it factor. And I've talked with a few of my basketball buddies about it before, and I know this is going to sound blasphemous for some, but I'm not making this comparison just yet. But I'm talking about the way he plays, the way he moves, the way he can jump, the way he shoots. He almost plays like a modern day Michael Jordan. Again, I'm not saying he's as great as Michael Jordan yet. But I'm just talking about his style of play. The way he attacks the basket, the way he runs and dribbles the ball up the floor. And it feels like he models his game after Jordan a little bit.
Well, I've heard that comparison already. I've heard some of the national media say that exact same thing that you said. So there certainly is some truth to that he plays that kind of game. And if you play that kind of game, and he's younger, he's a couple of years younger than Tatum. So this is a guy that's going to be around. He's not going anywhere. He's only going to get better as he gets into his late 20s. So, hey, that's a team that's going to have to be reckoned with. But, I'm always jabbing Chris, as you know. The Celtics win a game, and it's like DW went off, and then another game, Jaylen Brown went off, and I'm always like, hey, where's your boy there, Chris? What's going on? He's like, well, wait a minute, look at the rebounds. I'm like, DW saved them tonight. What about JB, And then if Tatum has a big game, he's like, what is there, crickets there, Santos? We're going back and forth. And it's not that I don't like Tatum. I think that Tatum fancies himself as being like the best player in the league. I don't think he is. I'm not even sure he's the top 5 player. And there are other players that tend to come up when the chips are on the table. Certainly Jimmy Butler is one of them. But now even Jaylen Brown, except last year he had kind of a bad game in one of the playoff games, but Jaylen Brown seems to come through with the chips on the table a little bit more than Tatum, I think.
I can agree with that, yeah. And I can agree.
Plays a more edgy game, more of an edgy game. You know what I mean? He gets like, almost like irritated to the point where he plays a more like a more tenacious game.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think he's like just in terms of, I shouldn't say work ethic, but in terms of intensity, I would take Jaylen over Jason a little bit in that way. And I'll say one of his biggest issues last year was the inability to dribble with his left hand. Well, he's clearly worked on that. He looks a lot better in that regard.
Yeah, last year, all they had to do every time he dribbled with the left hand, he turned the ball over.
Exactly. Just make him go left, and you won the game pretty much.
Yeah. I was looking forward to the Celtics against the Joker, but, hey, it's 2-0. They can come back from that. I mean, they lost 2 at home, and I was watching one of the games. It was on late, but I put it on. I'm like, oh, my God, I can't believe they're losing again, especially the second game. First game I didn't see, but the second game I did. And, yeah, they had Jokic all messed up, So you got to tip your cap to Minnesota. I don't know who's going to come out of the West, but I was kind of looking forward to a Celtics versus last year's champions. What a final that would be, Oh
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, I wouldn't put it past them to make it a little bit of noise in this, because I don't think they're going to get swept. Like I think they're going to take a game or two. So it'll probably go like somewhere between like I think it'll go like 6 or 7, because I feel like they're in enough of a hole where they have to really look at themselves in the mirror and be like, oh, okay, we are down 2-0 here. We kind of need to make some sort of major adjustment here. And I think that this will probably be the next game that either Jamal goes off in the fourth quarter, or Jokic has this virtuoso game and the supporting cast comes and helps it out a little bit. So I don't think they're going to get swept, but I think they'll make it a little interesting again.
Well, that great quote that the Red Sox player made, don't let us win one, So that you notice that people use that now,
Yep, Jaylen Brown used it last year.
Yeah, don't let us win one. So if Denver wins the next game, makes it 2-1, I don't know if they will or not. Now all of a sudden it's like, boy, Minnesota better win the next one. You know what I mean? If they win the 2 at Minnesota, all of a sudden it's a whole another series. Now they feel the pressure of having possibly blowing it.
Exactly.
Now, while I have you on the line, if you got a moment, I don't know if you got to get back to work, but what did you think of the Patriots draft, the first round taken May?
Oh, I love the Drake May pick, and my thing in regards to this is I do agree. I can agree with Chris when he said he wanted to trade down, like the roster is so bare. You need to get as many top end talents as you can get, but at the same time you could also look at it and say you don't expect to be picking at number 3 again. So I'm for the idea of, getting a guy who sure, absolutely, he's raw. Like he's got a lot of stuff to work on. But, when you're picking a quarterback at number 3, you got to be looking at like a generational prospect in terms of physical, tangible stuff, like the big arm, the mobility and stuff like that. And, you got to have a coaching staff in place that can work on those things a little bit. And people give kind of crap on Alex Van Pelt all the time. I'm personally higher on him than most. Like I'm not jumping and going like, woohoo, we got Alex Van Pelt, the best offensive coordinator in the league. But I personally like what he and Stefanski did in Cleveland. I like the fact that he's in the building, and he's worked in Green Bay in that kind of West Coast system that helped get Rodgers from like a raw prospect to tightening up the mechanics, the arm motion, stuff of that nature, into what he is now. Plus, even though it's not the modern day Shanahan stuff, it's kind of like the older Gary Kubiak stuff. So it's still some foundation of that offense. So I like the idea of getting like a big guy, big arm, physical traits through the roof, and just sit him for a little bit to develop him. Because even though we drafted a receiver, we drafted a tackle, we addressed some needs. I'm still questioning as to whether we got the right players in place for that. So I don't know if Caden Wallace can play left tackle. I don't know if Jalen Polk could be a number 1 receiver. And I'm starting to dislike the pick more by the minute because the players that were on the board beforehand. So I kind of want to start Brissett and see how if Caden Wallace wins the left tackle job, and see how Jalen Polk performs, see how Javon Baker performs at wide receiver. I want to see how those things kind of come together under the new coaching staff before I throw them out there.
Yeah, right. It's interesting because, it's such an inexact science. When you think about how much money these teams spend on scouting and watching these players play at college and try to figure out who's going to be the next big thing. Right. And you end up with I think Mahomes was number 10, just to give an example. I mean, when you think back about it now, how could he be number 10? People would be drooling over the thought of having somebody like Mahomes. And of course, you see the Tom Brady, an exaggerated example, So,
right.
Hey, you know what? Chris is calling in, so I got to find out where he is. So, hey, Ryan, thank you very much for your contribution. It's always fun chatting with you.
No problem. Thanks for having me on again, man.
All right, Ryan, have a good one. Hello, you're on Santos on Sports.
How you doing?
Good. What's going on? Did we have our signals crossed?
No, not at all. This is all my fault.
Oh.
I had a banquet for my Stonehill College.
Okay.
But I didn't have my phone with me. When I left to come back, I got a fucking flat tire.
Hey, we're on the air right now, by the way.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, I figured I'd just start the show and see if you would, call in or whatever. So
I understand.
Yeah, so you're on the air, so that's okay.
Oh.
Compared to the Tom Brady roast, that was nothing.
I hear you. Unfortunately, I got a flat tire, and
All
I
right.
was
Well, I'm
on
glad.
24, fixing it.
Well, I'm glad that's all it is, because then I was thinking to myself, should I just do the show anyway? We haven't done one in a while. So so I went on, and Butch called and Ryan called and the regular callers are calling, and I'm thinking, geez, I hope Chris is all right. I just said, hey, Chris, Chris is off tonight, and off we went. But yeah, Butch called. We were talking about the Celtics and the Bruins, and so what happened? You ended up changing the tire yourself, I imagine.
I got AAA, and by the time
AAA.
At AAA, yes.
All right, so I'm going to say hello to Jill. Jill is looking in tonight. Hey, Jill, how are you? So you got a moment to talk some sports here, or do you have to go?
Let's talk. I'm ready. Now I'm ready.
All right. Well, let's see. Oh, let's start with the Celtics, because I was just telling Ryan how I'm always jabbing you about your boy Tatum. Well, right now JB is averaging 24 points a game in the playoffs. Derek White is averaging 22. Tatum is averaging 21. I know he's getting rebounds and assists and all that. But it's not like, he's taking the team and putting him on his back. My argument is, if the Celtics win, it's going to be because of the fact that they're so deep, more so than, their best player took the team on his back and took them to the championship.
I totally agree. This has been a good team effort. I think White right now is their MVP.
Right.
He's been as solid as a ball player that you would want as a teammate. I still like the way Tatum has handled himself, that he's getting contributions in the rebound and the assist department.
That's true.
And okay, he's not the leading scorer. Okay, that's fine. You're still doing your job to get White available, to still get Brown the ball. Now, if Brown comes out and scores, let's say 28, but he only has 1 rebound and 2 assists, and yet Tatum comes up with 18, 11, and 8, hey, I'll take that, because to me, that's 5 guys who are putting themselves out there and working as a team. Now, we haven't seen, Paul, we've talked about this, a down the stretch kind of a game yet.
No.
That's where my concern will be coming in when they get to something like that. Can they handle it down the stretch?
Well, a lot of times in those close games, the tight games,
Yeah.
that seems to be when they've had problems in the past. And, if they're blowing people out, well, then it's not going to be a problem. Even you're talking about Missoula, right? Well, if you're winning the game by 20 points, you know what I mean? There isn't any important timeout or important play you got to call or anything like that. You know what I mean? So obviously it's helpful. I mean, this team, Cleveland's not going to give them a challenge. What do you think about the Knicks if they get to the next round and face the Knicks? You think the Knicks could take them out? I don't think so.
I don't think the Knicks are a defensive team. They just want to run up and down the court. And the Pacers are that same kind of team. So that's why you're seeing some high scoring from those two teams. I think the Celtics offer a little bit more on the defensive side of the ball. And as you said, with the depth, where you can have Hauser come in, you can have Pritchard come in to give those guys a rest. But when you need those guys, and obviously a healthy Porzingis, if he comes back, I think they'll be fine against either one of those teams, after they get by Cleveland, which I think they can do.
The thing is, I mean, they have been a little on the fortunate side. No Jimmy Butler. Didn't have to play Embiid. You don't have to go through, KG. You're not going to see Steph Curry. Even now, right? I'm looking at the West, and I talked about it a little bit with Ryan. What's going on with Denver? I thought for sure that it was going to be Denver and the Celtics. Of course, that's why we love sports, because you never know what can happen. But Denver, they're in trouble, down 0-2. What's going on there?
They are in a little bit of trouble, but, Anthony Edwards, I talk about a guy who's carrying his team on his shoulders, along with Towns, 2 very solid, capable ball players that, I would say top 25 players in the league, making their name and saying, hey, we're not afraid to go up against the MVP of the league in Jokic and the Denver Nuggets. And right now they went on the road and did what they wanted to do. Usually you want to get 1, they got 2, and now they're coming home. So, they're playing very, very good, inspiring basketball that could easily win the West. And I'm hoping that, the Celtics do what they do in the East and play them in the West. Now, Paul, I know you talk about injuries.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen injuries come and go. And Porzingis, he's an injury factor, and we knew it was going to happen sooner or later. Now, when other teams do it, like Giannis and some of these other guys who have gotten injured, sometimes it's their top dogs, and sometimes that just works in your favor.
Right.
You don't expect it to happen, but when it does, hey, it's a bonus for you. But you still got to go out there, and anybody can beat anybody on a given night. So you still got to go play the game, and you got to do it the right way. So the Celtics are seeing that. They're taking advantage of it. And D. White right now is leading them, and I like what I see from him.
I got to tell you, out of the West, right, you got Minnesota right now. Let's say Minnesota knocks off Denver. That's an upset, right? So usually what happens is that team that does that, a lot of times they'll say that's the Cinderella team. That team that upsets that top dog usually can't do it again in the same playoff. Usually they upset somebody and then they go play somebody else and then they get beat themselves. So my view of that is if Minnesota knocks off Denver, that's going to be like a big advantage Celtics.
Well, you would think so. I mean, and again, Oklahoma City is no pushover either.
Right.
Now they're playing Dallas, and Dallas has Doncic and obviously Irvin, but I think a more complete team, and they've had a great season, is Oklahoma City. So I'm expecting them probably to win that one. So now can Minnesota go out after making this huge upset of Denver to play Oklahoma City and knock them off? So that will be interesting to see if those two teams have to go against each other and how inspiring Minnesota is from the win over Denver if they get by them and say, hey, if we can beat Denver, we can beat anybody. Let's just go do it. So sometimes it works in your favor, but then sometimes it's like, all right, we caught on fire for that one series and we can't back it up. So let's see how they make out.
All right, hockey, the Bruins, right? They got by that first round, very exciting. And by the way, I broke the curse because I was at Game 7, so I broke the curse. So that was fantastic being at that game. What a great moment that was. But anyway, they get by the Leafs, and now the first game against Florida, oh boy, they beat them pretty easily. But now the second game, wow, they just fell apart. The thing that I worry is, hey, riding Swayman, riding the hot goalie, I think that's the right decision. But their defense is just atrocious. You put any kind of forecheck on that defense, they can't get the puck out of their own end. I don't care what kind of goal you have in there. They better figure something out, because if they can't get the puck out of their own end, it's going to get ugly really fast.
Well, it is. And in Game 2 from last night, what you saw is a Bruins score to go up 1-0. And I like what Paul Maurice did. He did not sit there and say, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. He decided to make changes. He made line changes. He found the way to get Barkov back up with Reinhart. He made some other changes with the second and third line. The only line he kept together was the fourth line. And so he says, I'm not going to go down like this. I'm going to go down and I'm going to try to make some different changes. So what did they do? They went back to that, what we saw last year, that aggressive forecheck where defensemen see the hit coming, make a bad decision, just flip it up the boards. They take a hard hit because they're worrying about it. And then it's very soft. And then from being soft, what happens? It goes a turnover. They take the shot on net, or you're out of position now and you're running around, and then you get easy goes, tic-tac-toe, and you saw a couple of those goals. So that was very impressive by Florida. The other one was when you score at the end of a period with 3 seconds to go, you're sitting back going, oh, my God, you cannot give that up. And the Bruins, again, are giving up things they shouldn't. Unfortunately, they did in Game 2. But I like it if you saw, Paul, Swayman came off the ice. Who was the first person he saw?
I'm trying to remember now. Was it he talked to Ulmark, didn't he?
No, he talked to Ulmark, and then Jim Montgomery was waiting for him.
Yes, I did see.
I bet you Jim Montgomery said, listen, my man, we're doing this just to shake things up.
Yeah, right,
You're
absolutely.
our number one goalie. You're our guy. Don't worry about this. You're doing a great job. You'll be in game. You'll be the netminder for Game 3, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, I saw that.
I like the way I think Jim approached it. I think it's going to be no problem. The Swayman's still going to be in there. I just think they needed to, shake it up and take a different look after giving up what they do, being down 4-1, and give Swayman kind of a break.
After they had that fight, there was a lot of game misconducts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so the game really got out of hand, and the Bruins just kind of folded it up a little bit. So I don't see that happening, what happened last night happening like again and again. I don't see the Bruins getting blown out in every game. But they do have to figure out a way. Maybe they look at the tape and they can come up with some other method to get the puck out of their end, because, they'll go like a whole period with like one shot on net at the other end. I mean, the puck's in their own end. They can't get the puck down the other end to even take a shot. So they're not putting any pressure on, the offensive end of the ice when the puck's in the defensive end the whole time.
Yeah, and when I was coaching hockey, it was one of the big things we said, 5 feet behind the blue line and 5 feet in front of the blue line. How big is that area right there? Because if you can get it over the blue line, it gets it out of the zone. Everyone has to come out, and then you're going to start in again.
Mhm.
But if you can't get it past that blue line and that 5 feet that stays in, now they keep putting the pressure back on you. And then defensemen, what do? They panic. And when you panic, you make bad decisions. And I was even talking with one of our callers, Butch Ferrero, last night, and we kept calling each other saying, look at this backhand pass. Look at this backhand pass. If you're going to do that, then just cycle it around the boards the opposite way instead of the weak backhand and go, strong on the forehand and go around the other side and start all over again. So you got to find a way to live for another play, another pass, and then see if you can get the puck out of the zone. But if they're not going to do that and they're going to continue to take some hits and they're going to get weak, it's going to be a tough series for the Bruins because we saw it last year and it didn't happen in game 1, but it definitely happened last night in game 2.
There was a coach that my kids played for as they were coming up youth hockey, and they called that area that you described on each side of the blue line the no excuse line, the no excuse zone. That little area right around the blue line, because if you can get the puck from this side of the blue line to that side of the blue line, that makes all the difference in the world in what's going to happen in the game.
You got to weather the storm. We used to call it weathering the storm because you know it's coming, and you got to find a way to chip that puck out of that zone. Now, what happens is they made that rule that you flip it into the crowd, you could get a penalty.
Yeah.
So guys have a tough time now. Now we saw one. Marchand had it on his forehand. He went off the glass. It comes off the glass. The guy caught it with his hand, put it down on the ice, shot it in. Next thing you know, rebound, shoot, score.
Yeah.
And that happened last night. And you went, okay, even when they tried to do it the right way, it still wasn't working. So they need to get better, definitely inside their zone to have any success, because Swayman's not going to stop anything when it's like, 3 guys, tic-tac-toe, and it's in the puck. And how about the one the week back in the pass, the defenseman shoots it. There was absolutely nobody in front of the net. And the guy tipped it in, and it was another goal. So, they have some work to do. Hopefully they see the film on this and they get better. But, they're going to have to be a little bit more physical in the right way, not the wrong way, and absorb some hits and get that puck out of the zone.
Hey, Swayman, right? You can't say enough about him in that Toronto series and even in game 1 of this series. I mean, he has just been playing phenomenally. And, I think back to last year, or maybe even the year before, maybe they should have put him in before, because even though he's had stretches during the season where he's cold, he tends to be that guy, that sort of like money on the table kind of guy. He seems to elevate his game in the big moment. So I think you got to keep riding him, unless he just gets so tired or gets so worn out that he starts to fail. I wouldn't go back to this rotation thing at all. I'd stay with Swayman.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And even when you watch him on the ice, he looks happy. He looks confident. He's always smiling. Even when he gives one up, he kind of skates around. He's got a little smile on his face, like, yeah, okay, you got me that time, but I'll get you back on the next one. He's been sharp. I thought there was one time there he gave up a weak rebound and it kind of floated out, but that was pretty much the only mistake I've seen him make since the playoffs have started. So, he's been pretty strong, pretty solid. I think he's gotten more confidence, from last year or the year before, to say, hey, I'm starting to carry this team. I'm starting to get recognition like Tim Thomas used to get. And if you remember, they showed some comparisons between him and Tim when Tim, won the Stanley Cup back then, 2011, I believe it was.
Yes.
And so they showed what that was about, and kind of same kind of comparison. So it's a good sign. And I'm not really worried about taking him out yesterday. A lot of people said, oh boy, that's going to shake him up. I don't think it is.
No, I think we
it
knew
a
what was
smart decision.
happening.
Okay.
In fact, after that goal was scored, before he made the move, I'm watching the television, the puck went in, I said, you know what, I think they ought to just take Swayman out right now, just give him a little break, put the other guy in, and then he did. And I'm like, I agree with that move 100%. Had nothing to do with like, oh, we're yanking him because he didn't play well. He played great, but they just, like you said, they're just kind of shaking things up a little bit, that's all.
Yeah, and it's great to see what Montgomery did. First guy off the ice. Who am I talking to? It's my head coach.
Yeah,
and
right.
my head coach is giving me all the confidence in the world and said, don't worry about this, son. You're my man. You'll be there for game 3. I'm almost positive that's what he had to say. I didn't get that. I didn't read about it. I'm not sure if they asked him what he said to him. But I'm sure it was a vote of confidence.
I got to tell you, had the good fortune of being at that Game 7. It was just the exact opposite of what happened last year in Game 7 against Florida. But I got to tell you, I mean, even anybody that watched the game on television, doesn't matter where you were watching it, I thought Swayman stole a game. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw a goalie steal a game. I mean, obviously Pasta had that great goal at the end, but really during the course of the game, it was just one unbelievable save after another. And I was like, oh my God, this is fantastic goaltending. This happens every once in a while in the National Hockey League that somebody gets hot and they call it standing on your head and stealing a game. I think he stole that game.
I can agree to that, but I can also agree that I think Toronto is pressing because of all the years of not being able to move forward in the playoffs. So they're like snake bitten. And when you're snake bitten, you press, Paul. And again, Swayman made some great saves, don't get me wrong. But I think when you press, you try so hard to say, we're going to be the team. This is going to be our year. We're going to take Toronto to the Stanley Cup. And I just think it gets into that mode because, they had Matthews back, great player. They had Mana, another great player. They got good defensemen. Okay, they didn't have their goalie. They had another goalie, but it was not like it was a 6-5 game. It was a 1-1. It was right there where they wanted to be. But, the better goalie came through when they needed it, and they stole the game, as you said.
All right, before we go here, what do you think about Drake May?
What do I think?
Yes.
Well, I think the Pats had to go in that direction. You saw how fast quarterbacks went.
Yeah.
They decided to go with a position that obviously is of desperate need. Now, do I think he starts this year? I don't. I think Brissett is still a capable, backup guy that was with another team. But I think he's a capable guy to start the season and go with him, and then we make the decision as he goes. If he's not having a great year, or if it's not looking good, and I get more reps from May, and I get more looks out of him, then I say, okay, let's bring him in, as in like what they did with Brady when they had Bledsoe, that kind of a thing. So I don't think they just say, this is your team, guy, go get him, and they put him in the fire right away. Personally, I don't think I would do that, unless he really shows me something in preseason and in practices that you're just overwhelmed and say, hey, this kid's got it. Let's go get it. So I don't know if he has that yet. I don't see why it's a bad idea to sit under Brissett and kind of let him get going. He didn't look bad when he was with Cleveland and Indianapolis and a couple of them other teams. So it's good to have a veteran that knows what's going on, and he's been around the Patriot system before. So I think it was the pick they needed to do. And, if they develop him the way they can, maybe he'll be productive. But I just don't think it's going to be right away.
No.
So don't expect high expectations early. Maybe as the season goes on, we'll see how it looks and then kind of make some kind of adjustment from there.
Those spoiled Patriot fans are going to have to, realize that this is going to take a while. This is a whole rebuilding process. It's not going to happen overnight.
Okay, I mean,
right?
I can see that, but they went out in the draft and they got some receivers, and they did some different things that they thought were the best for the team. And like I said, it's a need position, and so the needs were going fast, and quarterbacks were going out flying right away. So they didn't go get an unrestricted free agent. They didn't go get any of that. So they had to make that move, and whether it was going to be Daniels or May, that was, what the Commanders picked in front of them, and they went with the next one. So, good luck to them. But I think Brissett gets the nod, starts it off for them, and then we'll see what the season looks like after a few games and start making adjustments.
All right. Well, thank you for calling in. I went on at 6:00, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll go on for a little while and see how long I can go by myself. We got a few callers. The next thing you know, I did the whole hour. But, hey, you had the flat tire, right? So you called AAA, right?
That's right.
I figured that, me calling AAA, you could see, right? Because I haven't changed the tires since, high school. I'm a pencil pusher, you know what I mean? But I thought Chris Santos would change the tire himself. You know what I mean?
Well, listen, the situation that I was in on 24 and everything like that, I'm just sitting there with all this traffic going, hey, man, I just want to get this as fast as I can done without any incidents. and try to get back as fast as I can. So normally, yeah, I would probably do it if I had a little more time, but I was trying to move this as fast as I can.
Well, actually, I was joking about not changing his tires since high school. That's not true because one time when my kids were small, I don't know if we didn't have AAA, whatever. I had a flat tire and I changed the tire in the breakdown lane, and it was on the side, on the highway side. You know what I mean? So I'm standing there changing the tire, and when every single time a car went by, there was this like gust of wind, like and then I'm thinking, man, I'm like, this is not good. I got to get this tire changed. I get the heck out of here. So I can understand that completely. All right. Wow. Hey, we'll keep our eye out on these playoffs. Hey, maybe we'll end up with Boston and New York in both the NBA and the NHL. Wouldn't that be something, huh?
That would be quite interesting. The Rangers, who I thought at the beginning of the year, this is the team that is going to win the Eastern Conference. I really thought that they have all the pieces of the puzzle right now. They're looking sharp. I like every part of their game. Talk about depth. They have a lot of it. So, it's something that the Bruins will have to watch, but they got to get by Florida first.
Absolutely.
They have to make sure they do that. I mean, yesterday, to watch a fourth line score a goal against you has to be deflating if you're the Boston Bruins. They were up 1-0. They gave up a goal to the fourth line. And if you notice when they gave up that goal, it was like a spirit just went through that entire building and said, now it's our turn to take this game over, because it really lit the crowd up. It really energized the first, second, and third line. And when Maurice made those changes, everything went back to normal for Florida, and they dominated the rest of the game.
Well, let's see if the Bruins can bounce back and just chalk it up to a bad game, regroup, and hopefully they can bounce back tomorrow. All right, Chris, thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Paul, thank you.
All right, Chris Santos from Santos on Sports calling in, wasn't available to be on the podcast, had the flat tire, changed the tire, and called in. So we appreciate that. We'd like to thank Louis Cavallo for commenting, Anne-Marie Baptista, Jill Valandry. I'd like to thank Scotty's Pub, Citywide Glass, Lakeville Athletic Club, and attorney John Seed for being our sponsors. I'm Paul Santos for Santos on Sports. Keep watching those games. Go Bruins, go Celtics, and we'll talk to you again soon.